In this video today, I'm going to go head-to-head with ChatGPT to answer a lot of the top questions that I've gotten in my community about how to better mix music. And we're going to see if a professional mixing engineer can give better advice than this computer language model. I'm actually pretty nervous about this one. ChatGPT is a chatbot launched by OpenAI in November 2022. So it's basically just a really, really smart Google that understands human language. It can answer questions that you have, it can give you advice, it can do math or homework problems, and as we will see shortly, it might also be able to answer mixing and mastering questions. This is going to be a super fun video today, so be sure to stay with me all the way to the end. If you don't know who I'm Bobby Balow, the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and this channel is dedicated to helping you make better sounding music in your home studio. As a thank you for your time and attention today, I want to let you know that I have a free downloadable guide in the description that contains all of my favorite free mixing and mastering plugins. So if you feel like you need some new tools to inspire some creativity for your music, you definitely want to go and check that out. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to read a question about mixing or mastering music and give my professional opinion about it. And then we're going to go to ChatGPT and see what it thinks the answer is. I hope this thing doesn't take my job. All right, the first question is, what is the best way to lock in kick and bass? In my humble opinion, not in some crazy robot opinion, I think the best way to lock in kick and bass is through one of two ways. Probably the best way to do it is through side chaining your kick drum to your bass guitar. And what that means is that when the kick drum hits, it automatically reduces those bass frequencies in the bass guitar so that both the kick and bass don't step on each other's toes and they can live together in your song. If you dial in the right attack and release settings, you can build in enough space for that kick drum to always punch through, and then the bass can swell in after the kick drum gets out of the way, and you have this back and forth movement of the kick and bass. The second option that you have is to make sure that your kick drum lives either above or below your bass guitar. And this is dependent on the song structure and the arrangement. If the key of the song requires the bass guitar to go to very deep sub frequencies, try to pick something that's pitched higher so that the fundamental of the kick drum lives above the deep sub bass of the guitar. That's the only way you're going to be able to have a good interaction between those two elements, and you still retain the impact of the kick drum and the power of the bass. That was a lot of advice from a human. Let's see what the robot has to say. What is the best way to mix kick, drums, and bass together in a song? All right, robot.
The best way to mix kick drums and bass together in a song is ensure that the frequencies of the two do not clash.
Nice job.
The kick drum fundamental frequency is typically in the range of 60 to 100 hertz, while the bass guitar's frequency is usually around 40 to 80. To avoid frequency masking, it's important to use equalization to carve out space for each instrument.
I agree. That's like basically what I was saying for the second part of the question.
Another tip is to ensure the kick drum and bass are playing in time with each other, and use compression to even out the levels and add sustain to the bass.
That is also a good suggestion. Additionally, you can use sidechain compression to create more space for the bass when the kick drum plays. Oh no.
This allows the kick drum to cut through the mix more clearly while maintaining the presence of the bass. Ultimately, the best way to mix kick drums and bass is to use a combination of EQ compression and sidechain compression to create a balanced mix that enhances the overall impact of the song.
That is exactly correct. And that's actually maybe a more thorough and better answer than I had. Let me know in the comments who won question one. Oh God, this is gonna be way harder than I thought. We're gonna go on to question number 2, which is how to make drums punchier in a mix. If ChatGPT gets this one better than me, I'm gonna be really sad. When I mix drums, I make them sound like cannons, so I hope I can win this one. The key to punchy drums in a mix are to be compressing a lot, using a slow attack to let the transient go through, and then also using a clipper to control the dynamic range, but also maintain that initial transient attack of the drums. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. What is the best way to make drums punchy when mixing music? Oh God, here we go.
Making drums punchy when mixing music involves several techniques.
Oh, great. Here we go again. I already hate this thing.
Use EQ to boost frequencies around drum fundamental frequencies, usually around 80 to 120 for kick, 200 to 300 hertz for snare drums. This will add more energy and power to the drums to make them sound more punchy.
Yeah, that's pretty much dead on. I would say a snare drum fundamental tends to live a little bit lower than that. So between 180 to about 250.
Compression. Use compression to even out dynamics of the drums and add sustain.
Agreed.
This will give drums a tighter, more consistent sound and make them stand out more.
Except if you don't adjust the attack, you're going to kill all the punch, stupid robot.
Transient shaping. Use transient shaping to add attack to the drums. This can be done with a transient shaper plugin or by using EQ automation to boost the attack of the drums.
That is a good point. I forgot about transient shapers. They do work really, really, really well on drums. Ugh, I hate you. Panning, add width, pff, nonsense. Reverb and delay.
Use reverb and delay to add depth and space to drums.
Very true.
This can be used to make drums sound like they're in a room or larger spaces to make them more impactful and powerful.
I would say that's probably only the case if you can very carefully time the movement of the reverb with the drums. Just using reverb alone, psychoacoustically, in my mind, tends to push the drums farther away from the listener, and I think it actually takes away from some of the punch. All right, next question, round number 3. What are the best settings for a mastering limiter? So this one's a little tricky because it comes down to what type of music it is, the arrangement, if loudness is the goal. For this case, I'll just talk about some good general guidelines that I use when I set my mastering limiters. Something that I almost always do is I unlink the stereo information on a mastering limiter. So I don't like it when something on the left side causes the right channel to lower in volume. I find that that kind of collapses the stereo image, so I tend to always unlink my mastering limiters, so they're operating basically in dual mono mode. For me, that's pretty much a universal thing. The next thing that's really important is to always gain match your limiter settings. So if you do a bunch of limiting, offset the output so that you can bypass your limiter and it's at the same volume as the original signal going into the limiter. That's important because we lose perspective really fast as human beings when we try to adjust limiters. It usually will make it sound louder, and so if we hear something that's louder, we think it sounds better. Not always the case. So when you gain match that, you put them both at the same playing level, and then you're able to make a good objective decision if all that compression you're doing with the limiter actually benefits the music over the loudness. And that's basically it. Limiters are pretty straightforward. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. What is the best way to set a mastering limiter for music? Oh God, here we go. What do you got to say now?
The best way to set a mastering limiter for music is to use it as a final stage in the mastering process to ensure the overall loudness of the track is consistent and competitive with industry standards.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer the question. I want to know what the best settings are. Oh God, here we go. Now it's going.
Start with a low threshold and a high ratio, around 4:1, and gradually increase the threshold while decreasing the ratio until the desired level of loudness is achieved.
I don't think I've ever done that in my life, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't work. But in those circumstances, I think what you really need to be listening for is how loud you can get it before it starts taking away from the song itself. Focus instead on when you start losing the emotional connection to the song.
Use a look-ahead feature if the limiter has one. This allows the limiter to anticipate and react to sudden peaks in the audio signal, resulting in more consistent and transparent sound.
That is absolutely true. If you use look ahead, you'll actually reduce distortion artifacts that are caused from the limiter. However, if you're working on impactful or aggressive styles of music like rock or metal or maybe some like dubstep, sometimes that distortion is welcomed in those genres. It's going to keep everything feeling more in your face and aggressive. And sometimes that outweighs the downside of adding a little bit of distortion to the mix. But if the goal is to make it sound transparent as possible, it's able to see those peaks coming in advance and then more aggressively pull them down, which again, takes away from the transient. So be careful with that one.
Avoid over-limiting, which can cause the audio to sound distorted and unnatural.
Yes, totally agree. Let's keep rolling.
Use a multi-band limiter if the limiter has one, resulting in more transparent and natural sound.
Your mileage may vary on that one. That is not a guaranteed. So that is very much limiter dependent. Find out the ones that are working the best for you and stick with that. It doesn't have to be a multi-band limiter. Whatever sounds best for that song.
Monitor the audio on multiple playback systems, including headphones, speakers, and car stereo to ensure that the audio sounds good across different playback systems.
That has absolutely nothing to do with setting a limiter. Screw you, ChatGPT, you lose.
Finally, use your ears as the best way to set a limiter and listen to the audio and make adjustments as needed until it sounds good to you.
That is actually the best advice you can possibly give for how to set a limiter. Use your ears. Don't worry about what anybody else says. You'll know if it sounds good when you hear it. All right, question number 4. Is analog gear better than digital plugins? Oh boy. Now I gotta go first. Maybe I'll make the robot go first. Nah, I'll go first. Little fun fact about me and my studio. I used to have a ton of analog gear. I currently do not mix with any analog gear because the workflow is much, much better. It allows me to recall sessions years and years later. I'm also able to work a lot faster because I can print music faster than real time. For me personally, I don't find the benefits worth it. For some people, analog gear is amazing. It's fun to turn knobs with your hands, but you can get a professional sounding result using totally digital products, I promise you. However, when you use analog gear, you don't suffer from some of the same limitations that you have as digital plugins. For example, there is no such thing as aliasing when you're using external gear. You could potentially alias on the way back in through your converter, but a lot of those are designed so that you'll never ever hear any aliasing because they operate at like 256x oversampling. So for this conversation, analog gear does an alias. Almost any nonlinear plugin that you have will have some sort of aliasing. For the most part, if you're careful and you do a good job and use your ears, you'll never hear any of these aliasing artifacts, and the music will still sound great either way if you use analog or digital. All right, that was a lot for my answer. Let's see what the robots have to say. What is better for mixing music, analog gear or digital plugins?
Both analog gear and digital plugins have their own unique advantages and disadvantages when it comes to mixing music.
I was expecting the robot to side with the digital world, but maybe it has more perspective, I guess. It's still writing. It's still writing. Oh, man.
Analog gear such as equalizers, compressors, and tape machines are known for their warmth, depth, and character. They can add a sense of warmth and organic quality to a mix that can be difficult to replicate with digital plugins.
I don't completely agree with everything that's said. Usually EQs are linear processes. Maybe there's some subtle saturation or nonlinear process to analog EQs. I haven't been able to differentiate between a digital EQ and an analog EQ ever in my life. Maybe I haven't heard the right one, but in my opinion, probably not a big deal for equalizers. Compressors and tape machines are a different story. Those have very different flavors, but I agree with ChatGPT that it really comes down to the song and what you're going for. Not like it's a direct advantage having analog over digital. It just sounds a little bit different.
Digital plugins, on the other hand, offer a greater degree of precision, flexibility, and versatility. They can be easily recallable, modifiable, and can be used in a variety of different platforms. They also take up less space and are usually more cost-effective than analog gear.
Nailed it.
Ultimately, the choice between analog gear and digital plugins will depend on specific needs of the mix, personal preference of the engineer, and the budget available.
I didn't mention budget, but yeah, analog gear is crazy expensive.
Using a combination of both can be a good approach. Using analog gear for the warmth and character it can bring, and the digital plugins for precision and versatility. Some engineers prefer to use digital plugins for most of the processing and use a small section of high-quality analog gear for specific tasks.
That is absolutely true. I know a ton of mixing and mastering engineers that do a lot of the corrective stuff in the box using digital plugins, and some of them will use analog gear for the mastering chain to add a little bit of that secret sauce to the mix. So yeah, that was a pretty good answer, computer person. All right, next question. This one's kind of fun. I'm really curious to see what it has to say about this. What is the best headphones for mixing and mastering music under 500 bucks? So in my opinion, there's only one answer for this, and that is the Sennheiser HD650s. I use these all the time in my studio. For the price point, you can't beat them. Are they perfect? No, but with a little bit of EQ, you can get them pretty close to sounding amazing. And I think on average, they sell for about 399 bucks. Let's see what the robot has to say.
There are several headphones available for under $500 that are suitable for mixing and mastering music.
Let's see. Bayer Dynamic DT990s. Boo! They're actually pretty good, but I wouldn't say they're the best. Oh, we're getting close. Sennheiser HD660s. This is terrifying. So here's the headphone list that ChatGPT came up with. Number 1, Beyerdynamic DT990 Pros. I would say those are good entry-level headphones. They have some known EQ issues. They're known to be a bit harsh in the upper mids. The Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs are pretty good if you're on a super tight budget. What I would actually recommend if you don't have a ton of money, but you want some really good headphones, is actually these. And ChatGPT hit a home run with this. They're like really close to the Harman target, which basically just means that they sound really, really flat across all the frequencies. This, in my opinion, is the best budget headphone you could possibly buy. The Sennheiser HD660Ss are basically the newer version of these bad boys, the 650s. The fact that ChatGPT picked basically what I recommended is pretty terrifying. But if you didn't know better, you would have gone with the Beyerdynamic 990s and then probably been a little disappointed. This is why you subscribe to my channel, and I give it to you straight. All right, final question for the evening. Are you ready for this one? Are you ready? I don't know what it's going to say, but we're going to find out. Do expensive microphone cables sound better than cheap microphone cables? That's the last question for tonight. All right, this is what I think. For microphone cables, specifically microphone cables, that would be an XLR cable. Those are shielded, those are balanced cables. So in that situation, I would say the microphone cable quality does not really matter at all. What you will find is that the higher quality cables will probably last longer. So if you are on stage performing, maybe you want to spend a little bit more money for a cable that has a lifetime warranty, so that when you trip over it and break when you're rocking out playing your guitar solo, you just get a free one from Guitar Center. Now, if we're talking about unshielded or line level cables, that's a different story. They're more susceptible to electromagnetic interference or EMI signals like your cell phone or a charger or something. So they'll pick up noise from the environment a lot more. In those cases, there might be better shielding technology inside of those cables that would give you a better end result because you're going to have a cleaner signal going in that you're recording. But for microphone cables that are balanced and all that stuff, I think you're pretty good buying a cheap $3 cable from Amazon or something. All right, bring it, ChatGPT. Tell me what you think. I don't know if that's enough context, but oh man, here we go. It actually knows what I'm talking about.
The sound quality of microphone cables is primarily determined by the construction and materials, which can vary widely in price. In general, expensive microphone cables are made with higher quality materials such as silver-plated copper, which can result in higher signal-to-noise and less distortion. They also tend to have better shielding, which can help reduce interferences from external sources. However, it's worth noting that differences in sound quality between high-end and a low-end microphone cable might not be as significant as the price difference would suggest. That being said, there are many factors that can have more significant impact on sound quality than the microphone cable, such as the microphone itself, the preamp, and the recording equipment.
Totally agree. Don't waste your money on microphone cables. Buy good microphones. Buy good preamps. That is where you're going to get the biggest impact.
In general, if you are working on a professional project and you want to ensure that you have the best possible signal quality, investing in high-end microphone cable might be a good idea.
I disagree. You just told us that it doesn't matter. Everything else matters more. Stupid robot.
For most hobbyists and home recorders, a good quality cable that is affordable should suffice, and you can use the money saved on other gear or studio upgrades.
Thank you. You brought it all home, ChatGPT. That was a beautiful way to finish that question. Bravo. Even more so than all that other gear and stuff, acoustically treat your room. That is where you're going to actually be able to hear what's happening in your music, unless you have headphones. If you have headphones, then buy better gear or buy better headphones. But if you're mixing out monitors, take the saved money from your microphone cables and buy some acoustic treatment. Me versus ChatGPT. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Who gave better answers? Was it the robot or was it me? Let's get a running tally going in the comments. I want to see what everybody thinks. So if you think this was useful or you're trying to make your music sound better, you might want to hit that subscribe button because I drop new videos every single week to help you level up the quality of your music. If you're trying to make better sounding music, but you're limited by the tools that you have, in the description, I have a free download that you can go and grab right now that has a list of all of my favorite free mixing and mastering plugins. So you can get some new tools that might help inspire some creativity totally for free. Go and grab it. I know you're going to love it. With that, I want to thank you so much for your time and attention today. This was a crazy experiment. It was super fun to do, and I hope to see you in another video.